The video game market is the largest entertainment industry in the world, and somehow the mainstream media and political leaders still misrepresent gamers and gaming as a white, male-dominated hate group where the far right and evil mass murderers hide and grow their radical ideologies through their overanalyzation, constant misrepresentation, and boomer knowledge, or as I've dubbed it, boomer brain. This villainization of the gaming community is shown when there was outrage by the mainstream media with allegations of racism and hateful imagery in the first-person shooter by Capcom, Resident Evil 5. These allegations were brought up when in a trailer, the white protagonist is seen shooting a horde of black zombies in Africa. With the editor of Newsweek, name really hard to pronounce, it's on screen, claiming there was a lot of imagery in the trailer that dovetailed with classic racist imagery. And Dan Whitehead of Eurogames saying, "It plays so blatantly into the old cliches of the dangerous dark continent and the primitive lust of its inhabitants that you'd swear the game was written in the 1920s. While taken out of context of the series, these comments hold some serious weight, but when poked in any way, it becomes clear these journalists are either ignorant or believe you shouldn't include other cultures and countries when expanding your virtual world, or worse, they are purposely misrepresenting the game to generate clicks for their news sites." Resident Evil as a game series has always been about zombies, and it uses them to put the characters in dangerous situations where they need to shoot their way out to survive. These situations have happened all over the globe in places like Paris, Spain, American Midwest, and off the coast of France, with the zombies matching the race demographic of those locations, and somehow the mainstream media has found some racist theme because of the studio choosing to set their game in Africa. This weird stance was what many in the gaming community see as gaming journalists taking a more social justice stance when talking about video games and gaming news. This overanalyzation and misrepresentation is a common theme in gaming journalism, with the most targeted game being Rockstar's GTA 5, with the most controversial review being by GameSpot journalist Carlin Pettit. GameSpot as a company claims to have the most authoritative, unbiased reviews for the latest PS4, Xbox One, PS3, Xbox 360, Wii, PC, 3DS, and DS video games. This was questioned when Colin Pettit's review for GTA 5 quickly went from an informed review of the gameplay, characters, and story into an opinion piece about women in gaming in the last 3 paragraphs, where she seemed to misunderstand how satire works, with her having no issue with the portrayal of black Americans being gangbangers and criminals, and white Southern Americans being hillbilly rednecks who are incestuous, but taking offense by the portrayal of women and views on women, with one ad in the game being a fragrance that will make women smell like a bitch. She admits that these are exaggerations of misogynistic undercurrents in our own society, but somehow right after that claims they're not satirical ones, with the definition of satire being the use of humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices, particularly in the context of contemporary politics and other topical issues. Clearly this satirical ad is being used to poke fun at the over-sexualization and demeaning ads that are targeted towards women in real life. The article currently has 174 upvotes and 2,163 comments, showing there was a general consensus in the gaming community that she was in the wrong on her assessment of the game. As always, some comments were purely just as mean-spirited as possible, making insensitive comments on Pettis' gender, her being a trans woman. But things like this are always prevalent on the internet when people are giving anonymity in an online form. Sadly, because of the minority of trolls, the general argument went from disagreement to victimization and overgeneralization, with Pettit saying the average straight white male player wouldn't agree with her opinion on GTA 5's so-called satire, as it promotes their worldview. In the end, this victim argument is just used to shut down discussion, and in many ways admits to her bias on the review, clearly going against the policy of the company she works for, with the main complaint being that this is clearly a biased review and taking that review to a different platform would be fine. It's just when a media site claims to be unbiased, they should strive to hold that stance in every review. Boomer brain. Definition. When someone born between 1946 and 1964 is unable to understand modern issues as their brain grew up without the knowledge of the internet, and in part are the weaker generation. This plague of boomer brain has been rampant in our society, dating all the way back to the start of gaming, but was first prevalent after news organizations took the stance that the 1999 Columbine shooter was inspired by violent video games. One of the shooters, not saying his name because he's below scum, was known for regularly visiting the arcade after school, so the mainstream media ran with this story saying it's the reason he was violent and antisocial. Later it was revealed that the game he played most was Dance Dance Revolution, a rhythm game where the goal is to step on 4 arrows in tune with the song that's playing. This jump to correlation equals causation is shared between most boomer politicians, with Hillary Clinton in 2005 claiming violent video games increase aggressive behavior as much as lead exposure decreases children's IQ scores. And Trump this year, in response to the shootings in Texas and Ohio, saying we must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace. This is too easy today for troubled youth to surround themselves in a culture that celebrates violence. From the research Hillary is talking about, the average IQ of a child with lead exposure is dropped by 2.6 points, with the average IQ being 90 to 100. This means an increase in aggressive behavior of 2.6%. The trick there is that they studied aggressive behavior. This can mean in some cases increased heart rate or adrenaline, and children stating if they feel angry or frustrated with the games. Many modern studies have completely disproven this, with some showing children pre-exposed to violent video games show less aggressive behavior when faced with frustrating tasks in said violent video games. Many experts who look into this topic agree that an increase in temporary aggression is the same seen in situations like sports where you are put in a competitive environment. Trump claiming video games are a cause for shootings and teenagers being exposed to that culture shows the extent of his boomer brain. Ignoring any and all other possible factors like the fact both men had an online presence that showed links with the far right for the Texas shooter and the far left for the Ohio shooter. Yet both were still able to obtain a gun without any problem, and were able to kill so many people in such little time with their fully automatic rifles. Blaming gamers doesn't just disempower gamers, it disempowers everyone, from the children in their schools trying to get an education, to the shoppers in Walmart trying to buy their groceries. Ignoring the real problems and using such scapegoats as video games puts everyone's lives at risk, and will not slow the rising gun problem in America. Instead of assuming a child playing Fortnite for 8 hours a day is the problem, maybe ask why that kid is allowed and feels comfortable playing for that long. Video games are for everyone, from the 40-year-old housewife playing Candy Crush to the 15-year-olds yelling at each other while playing COD. With the rapid expanding of the industry, media still tries to put gaming in a box, but the fact is that it's larger than just white dudes playing Halo now. The number of different cultures built around styles of gaming, with further subcultures for specific games, and even deeper subcultures within those games. The chance of gamers being able to agree on what's racially insensitive, or what is or isn't satire, is impossible. So instead of disempowering each other, the gaming community should all come together and unite, as we can all agree, fuck boomers.